Good day, everybody. WoodDriver once again coming at you live. If you're watching it live, we're at the New Style Independent Studios, Hanover, Pennsylvania, and I'm out of Maryland, of course. But WoodDriver's all over the place. So, got some cool stuff for you today. Last week, if you got to tune in, you saw Lola, one of my huskies. She's the eldest husky. She's the more traditional looking husky, the black and white masked with the blue eyes. And I brought her here first because I had a veterinarian appointment just for normal shots and checkup. And she did really good. She's I mentioned kind of a big bone girl. She likes to eat. So she's a couch potato, so kind of a rough combination there. Sometimes they could say that about me too, but we won't go there. So with Lola, I was trying to shave a little bit of weight off her, believe it or not hair. We never shave huskies, but take a little weight off of her. And believe it or not, she lost better than 5 pounds. So I attribute that to the work I do with her. And lately I've been developing this mush CrossFit system I call. So I've been expanding, and now I've done this for my 30 plus years of running huskies, having huskies in my life, etc. I've only, I get better and better every day, it seems like, learning from the huskies, learning from others, learning from myself, etc. So of late, the past couple years, when I really developed the electric dog sled on wheels, one of my best designs, it's the one you see me on most often, which has the U-bars and the dogs are out in front. Looks like a real dog sled. Many years in the past, I've run them on the side, and I call that the dog-powered go-kart. They've powered it. Everything's been electric, but all the dog-powered go-kart have been lightweight, so they can propel that, especially other generations of huskies when they were in their driving, pulling state, pulling age range. They did really well. So, but the electric dog sled on wheels, the latest rendition, is actually the most resembles the dog sled the most. It's actually a little different because it's totally different the way we hook them up. Relatively speaking, I mean, there's still sled dogs involved, but I like to say a mushing. It's not just for sled dogs anymore because almost any dog can do it using Dog Motorsports and using my designs. And the reason that's important to me is because as the dogs age, they're not capable to maneuver, to manage the weight that would be required to push or to pull, etc. So the Dog Motorsports makes it possible. So I like to develop stuff I can use for all my dogs' life from really puppy state till their golden years. And they basically, that's what they do. And when it's so familiar to them, when they've done it as long as they do it when they're my dogs for most of their lives, it's like, that's their joy. My greatest joy is giving my dogs their greatest joys. And this stuff's all instinctual to them. All dogs want to run, want to explore. They're curious. All the enrichment I talk about all the time, that's what dogs love. And all these bikes, I call them electric dog sleds on wheels, gives all dogs the opportunity. So all dogs will want to do this in some capacity. I've mentioned before, my 14-pound Chinese crested, I've taught her to do it on one of the designs that I could actually just keep her away from the wheels. That's the most important thing. And keep her as safe, 100% safe. And she's done it, and she's great at it. I don't do it enough with her because I take these long trips, and that's my wife's baby. So, but we've gotten out there, and that's on my websites, alldogmush.com, I call it. So if she could do it, and, a lot of people see what I'm doing, and they're like, oh my gosh, that's, cruel. That's this, that, and the other. But I try to explain to them, dogs don't have to engage. They don't have to pull. Here's my Chinese crest to do it. You don't think she's pulling, do you? She's a toy breed, by the way. Okay, so enough said there. I want to show you on the screen. So it's a little, we're gonna call this a little rough, but this is my latest design. So I'm really I've always been into designing the greatest dog rides, the greatest dog bikes, the greatest ways to give my dogs the greatest joys of their life. And what I mean by that, I say it, I know, I want to explain it. is running them in all different kind of configuration, using many different harnesses, weight vests that I'm going to explain in a little while, is a constant challenge for them. And it changes the whole trajectory. It changes the whole litany, the whole system up in so many different ways. And from their mental challenge to their physical challenge. And that all intertwines for what I call psychological and physical enrichment. So the bike here and the all the different bikes, you'd be surprised, but just changing up sometimes the smallest aspects changes everything for the dog. I mean, if I'm limited to where I can run a dog, if I've got, going around, I can get a mile going around a loop, then the next I'll run a mile and I need to put more miles on the dog, I'll run it in reverse. I mean, just changing up however you can just makes it that much more engaging. And dogs that are more couch potatoes, they'll get excited because, it's something different. Dogs that are just not as gung-ho, that when you change it a little bit, it gets a little more exciting. And I've talked about this all the time, and I'll go into more soon. But with this bike here, I'm calling this, okay, get ready. This is my rucking roadster. And I talk about rucking. Rucking is using a weight vest. Okay, it's for humans, it's a sport or an exercise, etc. So when we put a weight vest on, and I've done this many years. I'm almost a lifelong martial artist, and I've taught it. I've been to all levels of it, etc. So what I did in my younger years, I would use a weight vest because it's just going to promote good physical fitness, all different aspects, your core. If you're kicking, because I'm doing Taekwondo martial arts, going to help my leg strength, etc. Ankle weights, whatever the case may be. Adding weight can really mix it up, really challenge us. So it's similar with dogs. Now, it's not as popular. It's probably because I think it's just not as known and it sounds a little unusual. Everything I do is unusual. And there's not a lot of research done on it from what I understand. I mean, I've researched it to the ends of the earth and not many people know about it. Of course, there's a few companies out there. X-Dog, this is the X-Dog vest, and I'll go into this in a second. They're probably, to me, they make some of the best vests because there's so many things you can do with them. They have a spot on them to put cooling pads, which I didn't bring, but they're basically packs you'll put into a freezer or in cold water. They can recharge, and they're like a gel-filled pack. You don't really want to use ice because ice can shock the dog, and it goes, if it's placed properly, on their underside, which is closest to their internal organ, so it really can be effective at cooling them. The only issue is, of course, with a vest like this, in the warmer months, you're trying to cool them, but this is adding some cover to their fur, so it's not letting the airflow, so it's a little bit of a trade-off. So you have to be selective how you use it. We've got a question. By the way, any questions, comments, or concerns, there's no rules here. Everything's right, kind of like I used to think they said at an Outback Steakhouse. I'm ready to answer anything and address it. We've got one now. My producer's telling me. So Keith, hey, good to see you, Keith. It reminds me of my motorcycle style from the late 60s. Very interesting. Yeah, this bike is really, it's custom made. So it's kind of off the charts there in that regard. And it's got the big back wheels, and it's made to look like that, Keith. Thanks so much for the comment, by the way. The really cool thing about this is it's all electric. So there's no gas motors. I try to stay away from gas motors. Some things I have to have them in on some of my designs and some of the ways I run the dogs, just because there's not a good electric solution, and some of it is beyond my engineering capabilities to design. So we go with certain units like my ATV. I use an electric ATV, but for the ATV I like the best, which is lower down, which is not so much a touring ATV, more of a sport ATV. I could only find gas that was affordable and in my range, etc. So, but with this bike, it's so cool. Now, this went through a lot of different iterations with a really large front tire. And the problem is, because it's not fully engineered like many of the commercially available bikes are, they're not always fully engineered either. The steering was really hard. I mean, this is like a chopper, and choppers aren't the easiest thing to drive anyway. And some of this comes because it's a single axle in the back. A lot of times when you have wheels like that on a trike, if you have a differential axle, even on a quad, you'll get much better steering because the axle is spinning independently of itself, each wheel. So it makes it easier to corner, easier to go around. This thing was really hard to drive. And if I put dogs on there, it's going to be even harder to drive. So we kept going down, and we're down to a 16-inch front wheel, and it actually probably looks its best aesthetically. Now, I'm not as concerned about looks per se. It's all about the dogs. But I want it to be cool, and I want it to be fun, and I want the dogs to have the times of their lives, like I said, always. So with the smaller wheel, it made it a lot more manageable on the turns. We could split the axle, but that's just more work and gets into a whole other can of worms. The thing we did, if you'll notice on the front, which is probably the coolest, is and I'm going to blow it up a little bit there, those two water bowls. So multiple purposes there. The two water bowls, first of all, you see me use them a lot. I try to make almost all my rigs. It's one of the most important things, being able to hydrate the dogs. So it's not like, me, I'll take a bottle of Pepsi, probably should take water, but I'll take a bottle of Pepsi and I can stuff it anywhere. With the dogs, if you start messing with bowls, you forget bowls, they leave behind. The dog steps in the bowl, it tips it over. I mean, the bowls for what we do are not the best fit. Remember, I've been doing this for 30 years, so I've got my reservations and I've got my opinions about all this stuff. These water bowls I found by Ruffland are called water holes, and they're really nice because they hold, I think, almost 2 gallons of water. It depends. If you lean them back, you can travel with them with no spill. So it's almost like there's a reservoir, and the open part is not working when you lean it back, of course, and it just holds the water. When you tilt it forward, you lay it flat on the ground, the reservoir fills the water bowl part, and the dogs drink. So it really is pretty cleverly designed. So with the weight in the front of the water, that makes the steering like a piece of cake. You can almost steer it with your finger. So we solved that problem by having the water up front, and it gave a nice place to put the water without having to put it in the back. And additionally, here's another purpose. It keeps the dog. So I put my two, what I call my speed demons, Nikita and Cyan, up front. And dogs can be a little testy with each other. They're not spayed, so they're a little edgy. They will be spayed sometime in the near future. But when we stop, usually when they're working, there's usually not problems because they're focused. Dogs are one-track mind, basically. Give them a job, they're going to do it. They're not thinking about, like a human can get, sidetracked. That's why we got to meditate sometimes so we can forget everything. So dogs are real good at focusing on one aspect and just going. So they're working and they're focused on that job. They're not thinking about, what's for dinner. They're not thinking about what just happened 5 minutes ago. They're just going. So when we stop to water, to break, to, we got a detour, whatever, the dogs these two can be a little testy with each other. And I've had it with other Huskies too. So if we sit there long enough, they get bored. This is how dogs get into confrontations. They get bored. They start looking at each other. Hey, this is my territory. No, this is mine. And they could be a little nippy with each other. They haven't ever been, but I know what's coming from my experience, the way they act, the way they correspond with the way they act with each other. So these water bowls keep them in their own area, and they don't have to make direct eye contact. So they're not going to challenge each other. They're less likely to, and they can't reach each other around the water bowls. So additionally, I can lay the water bowl back. Less water is going to spill. If I make a sudden turn, some could spill, but less is likely to spill. If they're in the back and they're laying flat, more could spill. So really a lot of cool stuff going on here. And this thing was hard to design like that. So I got to give it to my team that when we did this, how much thought and process and development went into it. So while I'm here, I'm going to talk about the vest because that's what this is designed for. So this design of this bike is heavy. And the reason it's so heavy is to keep the dogs from wanting to pull it, from wanting to push it, from wanting to go fast, because I want to keep them slower because I want them to use weight vest. Running on unpredictable ground, when we're on a treadmill, I can add some weight to it because I can predict the surface, the environment. I know what's going to go on. When we're out on the trails, anything can happen. Dogs get excited. They start lunging a little bit. That's all fine. But when they got weight vest on, they could inadvertently tear something, hurt something, injure part of their body. So I like to keep it as calm as possible and not let them engage as much in that regard. I just want them to take a walk essentially, or maybe a light trot, depending on the weight, in this weight vest. So this weight vest has, first of all, you'll see, and it's going to make a loud noise here. This weight vest from X-Dog comes with these badges on it. They call it beast mode or whatever they call it. And I replaced them with labels that say, because I have different weights for each dog. I have like 4 or 5 different vests, starting off 5%, 10%, 15%, 20%, 25 or 30%. I mean, you're starting to get into the craziness. So I don't want other people to do exactly what I'm doing. But under certain circumstances, I can put more weight on the dog getting into those ranges to, once they're conditioned and everything is exactly right, to give them a more challenging workout, basically. Not out on the trails for heavy weight, but when we're at home, when we're in those controlled environments I talked about. This is really cool, though. The X-Dog, the newest version 4 or 5, I think they're calling it, vest. I don't have them, have a place for these. These are really nice because I can have all this different vests. And I mean, I could color code it too, but I think even with their new ones, they don't have them in colors. So they're using what they call, first of all, this goes around the dog's chest. And they're not actually engaged. They're not pulling in this harness. They don't want them to. I don't know. They leave it kind of questionable whether their tether points can hold the resistance of the dog pulling. But this would go around the chest, and it's got what they're calling Cobra buckles, and it has a Velcro attachment. So it's really nice for that one. And then underneath it, I don't know if you can see here, it'll go under and buckle. And again, these are metal buckles. Their first versions, I think 1 and 2, were plastic. I like the metal buckle. I mean, the vest itself weighs like 1.5 pounds, I believe, pound to 1.5 pounds. So it's something to start with, depending how big the dog is. They've got these all kinds of straps through here, which make it interesting. Now, which I think add to the design. I think they've done their homework where the pressure points are on the dogs and how to give it the most flex. So these are the weight vest, and we actually have them filled with BBs. These are pouches. So inside the pouch, you could put sand. The sand won't let you get, if you're really trying to get a heavier vest, the sand is lighter than, or I guess fuller than using BBs, metal BBs. So you can buy them on Amazon, whatever. And they're in a bag, so they're not getting out. And inside the bag, they stuff into the pouch along the side of the X-Dog vest. And then we zip that up for extra security. And it works really well. So there's 3 on each side, and then there's pouches on the side on the neck part. So that I think evenly distributes the weight. So underneath it, as I talked about, is 2 pouches that you can put these ice packs. They give you warming packs and ice packs. So with a Husky, I wouldn't use warming, but I'm not as knowledgeable in this because I don't do it, but they're saying something like it could comfort the dog, almost like Thunder Vest if dogs are reactive to loud sounds, fireworks going off, whatever. This could help them in making it warm, might feel like a womb, etc. So it's pretty interesting. I use the cool packs. I'm not, because I've been doing this so long, I've found what I think are better cooling packs than what they provide. They just last longer, they're thicker, and I just think they're better. And they inadvertently, because I have so many products that I go through. And again, I'm not paid to do any of this. Nobody's paying me for it. This is all me. But I've found a pack that fits in there perfectly and works well. So I'll use those if I want to cool the dog in that regard. But keep in mind, go outside with this vest on in the warmer months and you put the cool pack in there, you're keeping heat in too. So, I don't know how effective it is. What I'll do, I'll use this in the home even in the summer, I have air conditioning. It's a controlled environment when I'm using the treadmill because the cool pack does add a little bit of weight to it. And it also is definitely cooling them. And I don't have to worry so much about the ambient temperature because I know what it is. I don't have to worry about the sun, don't have to worry about humidity. I'm inside an air conditioned place. So that's when I'll use the cool packs. When weather is marginal, when it might feel a little warm to us, but got a good breeze blowing and it's cool outside, relatively speaking, because huskies are always warm. If it's above zero, even if it's below zero, it's usually too warm for them, relatively speaking, again. So with the cool packs, I might use it in what we would consider still chilly weather. Again, just to give them that extra weight and to give them, depending on what I'm trying to achieve, to give them cooling in weather that we still think's cool, but it's still warm for them. There's two, and I'm not as familiar with this, there's two actual buckles, attachment points, which they sell a parachute. So it'll create more resistance. So the dog's running, and this is dogs off leash because it's going to be hard to get those speeds on the electric dog sled on wheels to get the parachute to go, and it'll block me out. But it's pretty cool, pretty interesting training aspect. I'm going to take a question or comment here, and let's address that now. So we have from Dog Lover T90, what are the benefits of the weighted vest? Great question, and thank you so much for asking. So in my opinion and my experience, the weighted vest is going to, I've worn them so much, so I can speak from a human aspect and from my experience with the dogs, because I've been doing weighted vests for a long time with them as well. My experiences before I had dogs, so I was doing martial arts. For me, it helped me build my core strength, basically. I would put ankle weights on because I did a lot of martial arts, as I explained, Taekwondo, which is more of a kicking sport art. And when I would kick with the weighted ankle weight, it'd be incredible when I took it off. I mean, I'd be just like, the speed would increase and the kick would be better. Sometimes when you kick a lot in or do a lot of motions in a weighted vest, you're going to tire quicker. But I liked burning my muscles up to the point of exhaustion, until the point I couldn't lift them up. I don't do that with the dogs, but I did notice core strength built up, and whatever limb I was putting it on when I was using specific weights around wrists, ankles, etc., even around your head. Sometimes they'll do, boxers especially will do neck head weights, which builds the neck. With the dogs, what I find is they're less injury prone. So you don't need a lot of weight with the dogs, especially depending on the activity you're doing. If it's low impact, you can increase the weight some. When it's higher impact, you definitely want lower weight because they're bouncing and they're more of a chance of injuring themselves, twisting something. So if we keep it low impact and we've got low weight on them, even though I know I said you can have higher weight, depending on the condition of the dog and what you're training for, it actually will help them become less injury prone because you're really increasing the strength of the joints, of the muscles they're using every day if you're doing it while they're doing familiar exercises. Like I was doing the Taekwondo, they're doing the electric dog sled on wheels and they're doing the mushing effect. Then they're going to strengthen the muscles they use for that and the joints. So with that extra weight, it's kind of like them being overweight, if you will, and then doing the exercises. It's harder for them. So they're going to get more work and the joints are going to learn to manage that weight. If it's too much too quick, or something, like I said, if it's unpredictable ground, with the kind of weight we're doing, it's not as likely to happen. But if they're going full tilt, it could, and they could actually injure themselves. So you have to, I guess, you have to use this with a lot of care and a lot of caution. But they can become a lot less injury prone, and they can also build all the joints and muscles. So as they age, they keep them strong. So maybe they could stave off, and I've had this happen, stave off arthritis and other age-related debilitating diseases that might affect them. So my belief is all the strength they build from using the weight vest can help them. Now, not an everyday affair, definitely. What I'm trying to do, I've developed this Mush CrossFit system, I call it. So I'm trying to give them this once every week and a half, 2 weeks or so. So they're getting it a consistent dosage, but certainly not every day. I have other aspects I focus on, which speed, resistance, the weight vest, and also just being where they are, just a leisurely stroll. Like to go through all the renditions. And I talk about in some of my other aspects, I talk about spatial training, spatial awareness. And there's 6 topics I like to hit on with the dogs. So this is one of them. I think it can be really beneficial if done right. And that leads me to another, which I didn't bring, weighted collars. And I'm not talking about, I mean, some people really, they train the way they train, and I'll never knock them because I don't know what they're doing. But I've seen people go really heavy duty, and not that their dogs look bad. They don't. I don't. I just, for me, I like to keep it mild, but with a little bit of weight around their collar. I mean, I've put cameras on my dogs. They've worn them on their collars. So that rivals some of the weighted collars I talk about using, talking poundish, that range. But if you can build it up, which I haven't been as much, I haven't done as much with the weighted collars. That's one aspect I hope to implement. But again, we're not talking about a lot of weight, less weight, but for longer durations and doing more similar activities to what they'd be doing, but keeping them a lower impact by going slower and preventing the bouncing, preventing the longer stride or the quicker stride, etc. So that's where I think weight vests can be really beneficial to them. Now, different dogs, different training, etc. I'm using them with a working breed. This company that makes them, and I haven't taken the time to do this because I don't use this with my toy breed, don't use the weight vest. But they say, for breeds that aren't as active, just walking around the house for a little bit in the weight vest and going for a walk with the weight vest can really help similar aspects to what I'm talking about on a much more reserved level. So I think they have a lot of benefit to them when done right. And always, I mention this, always talk to your veterinarian, get their opinion on it, get their what they think. Maybe some of them have some experience. Certainly I'm going to call them a physical fitness veterinarians that focus on rehab and on the body of the canine with the muscle part, using water treadmills. There's a lot of veterinarians, and the name is slipping my mind now, that specialize in aspects I'm talking about. They're not going to know everything I'm talking about here, but they could better help guide you to if you can find one in your area. I know people that try to contact like Penn State University, I think, is a big veterinarian school. They try to contact their R&D department and ask them what they think about weight vests. So there's other ways to research this, but veterinarians, of course, are schooled. They've gone to school and they've been formally trained, so they can probably offer some really good information and opinions on what I'm talking about, especially for your dog, because they're going to know your dog best. So we've got another question here. Thank you for that question. And this is from Rain Maxwell for 2321. Is the vest company sponsoring this video? If not, they should reach out to you. That's very interesting. Thanks so much. They're not, actually. In fact, to me, it's a guy from what I know, and he does a really good job. His designs are wonderful. I've seen a lot of different designs. I've talked to him just on brief conversations about this, because I bought a lot of these things, and he thought I was doing this whole big training thing. But because I've got a bunch of Huskies, not a bunch, 4 of them, but for me, that's a lot. And because I'm so diversified in what I do, I wanted a vest for each. I wanted 4 different vests for each dog, or 5 for some of the dogs. And because I don't want to sit there and have to count the BBs, etc., put them on scales and do that. It's a process, but I wanted to be able to make individual vests for each dog, depending on how I wanted to work them in their vest accordingly. And I didn't want to have to recreate those vests and shuffle from vest back to back. I could afford to do it, so I did it. He thought I was some dog gym, but thank you very much. So I don't want to get too far behind, but the vest is one of the coolest things, I think. And again, always the most important aspect of anything we do is getting feedback from your dog, seeing how your dog's reacting to it. Sometimes I've never had a dog even think it's awkward. I mean, not like putting a pair of booties on where they dance all over. With a vest, they're just like whatever, and they go. If it, you certainly would never want it to be too heavy for them. So it's always you always start very slight. Even just the weight of the vest might be enough to start with, and then gradually build up. See how they react, see their feedback, and watch them if they're doing any kind of sport with you. See know what they do from maybe you have timings on them, how fast they've done stuff. And again, we're not trying to go super fast here, but just kind of understand the duration and the elapsed time and see if it was how it's corresponding. And then when you take the vest off, I'll tell you with Lola I talked about, she was here with me last week, who is a bit overweight, trying to knock some weight off her. It's been incredible. And so she is the couch potato. And she'll also get out there sometimes and we'll be on the electric dog sled and she'll just get bored of it. Like, yeah, okay. And then she'll just be kind of strolling along with it. And that's what's cool about it. Each dog goes their own pace. And I never go fast on the slowest dog, whoever that might be, whenever that might be. So it might be Lola today and it might be Inyo tomorrow. So I keep their pace. But with the weight vest, I don't know why. It just kept her more engaged. Now, I was doing less mileage with the weight vest. Kept her more engaged. Then we got out there the next time, and it seemed like she was reborn again. Just like that weight vest was incredible. And because I've just started implementing it in my Mush CrossFit system. So do we have another question, Rod? Okay. So while we're here still, I want to, sorry for getting out of frame there. So I want to pick up some of these harnesses just to give you an idea of what I do and how we do it and everything else. So I talk about resistance. So resistance is, if you think of mushing and you think of different sports where the dogs are pulling, joring sports they call them, or dog-powered sports, where the dog is actually pulling, more traditionally a sled dog. Sled dogs aren't necessarily huskies anymore. That we've talked about this. There are a myriad of mixes. But there's all different dogs that will pull and that they don't have to be sled dogs per se. But this harness is really unusual, and I'll get a lot of flack for this. Oh, I'll get the hate mail. This is called a roading harness, dog roading. And I know people go crazy. They think it's more of a parade harness or I've heard it called all kinds of names. So it's similar to what what weight pulling harnesses are, where people put weights. Dogs are trained to pull just weights to build strength, not to pull sleds. But this is a roading harness which connects to a funny looking tether. So this tether, I'm trying to get it in the camera's view, comes up in the air, and the dog actually pushes against the front of this harness. This goes, if it's seated properly, across their chest, not across their paws where it would limit their running and restrict them, and not across their throat where you would hear them coughing, choking, etc., but across their chest. And it provides resistance. And that resistance is almost like us taking an elastic band, maybe, I think they call them stretch bands, elastic resistance bands, and we're pulling with them. It gives a more gentle resistance versus lifting a barbell or pulling a barbell, if you will. So dog roading is a resistance sport, and it was originally not even designed for sled dogs. I just got the sled dog element into it. It was actually designed for hunting dogs, because it was designed to condition them. So you can go to my website, dogroading.com, and it explains this. And there's a leather version of this dog roading harness. I'm going to show you that now, too, real quick. So a lot of the harnesses I use are really high-end harnesses that are designed. Some of them are, this is custom built. Some of them are custom built, and they're really well thought out. So this is the leather dog road harness. And I don't even want to tell you what this costs. It's when they say Monopoly, do not pass go, do not collect $200, all that, you're going directly to jail. This is more than that. In any case, this is the same design again across their chest, and this one's padded. I use this more in the cooler months, the cold months, because it's a heavier harness. But the tether point again is up here. And hopefully you can see that. And it's got the side points. Now, and it goes on real easily. It's got just one belly strap, if you will, goes across them. I will actually use the side points sometimes for some of my electric dog sleds on wheels. So it wasn't designed for that. And sometimes it gets a little more fur wear than I'd like. It wears at their fur, depending how the dog's running. So it won't wear at the fur when it's on top. There's just no padding there. Sometimes I'll put a shirt on the dog to prevent it, but it gives the dogs a different dynamic. And that's why I like using different harnesses. So when we use the same, it's just like weightlifting. When we do the same pattern, if we curl every day, we're going to get our biceps bigger, or more conditioned. But what about our triceps? When are they going to get worked? Well, you reverse curl, you can work the triceps. So if we do one harness all the time and one sport, quote unquote, all the time with the dogs, they're going to develop those muscles. But what about the other muscles? So as they get older, those other muscles weren't never really developed or conditioned properly. Maybe they're going to be more prone to get age-related diseases like arthritis, joint immobility, etc. So I feel like if we can cross-train, cross-fit the dogs, we have more of a chance of keeping everything, all the muscles and all the joints as healthy as possible on them throughout their lives. Additionally, the different sports, different harnesses work the dogs differently. That's challenging their mind too, because they got to move a little differently. They got to, they might, they're not thinking about this. It's their subconscious, but they're learning to work that harness, and it's just training them differently. So it's keeping them on their toes, on their pads, on their paws. So those are the two roading harnesses. And there's a lot of flack about that, again, because of that design. But if used properly and fit it well, it can be very beneficial to doing these resistance sports I talk about. So I'm going to put them on the floor. So I'm going to psych you out now. You've never seen anything like this. This is the hardest harness I've ever had to put on. And I'm going to try to explain it. So this is a Seiko cart harness. And the Seiko cart harness is a 4-point harness. So if you're not familiar with the Seiko cart, the Seiko cart was originally designed to help train lead sled dogs because, similar to my electric dog sled on wheels, you can turn the Seiko cart independently of the dogs. They have to go the direction you're turning, and you can use a brake. So you can teach them all the sled dog commands. And with the specific harness, this kind of harness, which is a 4-point harness, they can't back out of it. So younger dogs or dogs that haven't been exposed to a harness gets on a Seiko cart and they're like, I don't like this. They're really, of course you comfort the dog, praise the dog, just don't throw them into there, please. But if you know me, that's what I'm all about. My relationship with my dogs and training dogs, etc. But sometimes you do your best, and some dogs can be a little reserved about getting into a harness. And then when you attach them to something, it just takes a lot of work. This makes training a lot easier when you have a 4-point harness, because they're less likely, not to say it can't happen, but it's a lot less of a chance of them backing out of the harness. So we got a question or comment here. I'm going to take that real quick. My producer let me know. So Lola's Work 7212. Thanks for the comment. I appreciate it. Sorry, Louisa. I'm saying that wrong. I'd love to do what you do, but seems that it would cost a lot. Can you give me a ballpark of how much I would need to spend to do something similar with just one dog? So you know what? I've been there, because when I started out doing this, I had limited funds and I had virtually no time because I had a full-time job. So basically, to get started, really all you need is a bike. Now, I'd prefer an electric bike, and today they're so affordable, and a minimal harness, a harness that would an attachment for the bike to put to safely. Some people use a leash, and I just don't like that, because anything can happen. I mean, holding a leash dog is a recipe for disaster, in my opinion. If you can get the proper device, there's a few of them on Amazon. My favorite is called a Springer. It is about $100, $110, something like that. The Springer, and it lasts forever. I mean, I've had some of mine for 30 years. I've got a lot of them now because I use them in different ways. But the Springer attaches easily to the bicycle, usually under the seat post. So all your weight's on the bike on top of that seat. So when the dog sees a squirrel or the dog sees a horse or something they want to on the trail, something they're interested in, and we could be talking a big dog, they can lunge, they can pull, they can do whatever they want. The Springer is going to keep them there, and it's going to keep you upright from falling over because it's virtually, I'm not going to say impossible, but it's pretty hard for the dog to pull you over in any circumstance using the Springer. It's a huge spring made to absorb all that energy and helps you train the dog. Hey, don't go in that direction. You need to go straight. So the Springer electric bike, you could start with a regular bike. You don't have to have an electric bike. When you get my age, you might want that. What's so nice about an electric bike and dog motorsports and everything I talk about? Going up a hill, you get to a trail and there's a hill climb, and you got to start pedaling it. And your dog's not pulling you because depending on the dog you have or what the conditions are, they just can't pull. You got to pedal. Usually they're at least able to walk with you, so they're not dragging behind. You don't want to drag your dog, but they're not adding weight to the bike. The electric motor kicks in and the dog can go any pace they want. You can go any pace you want and make it up the hill. And then you can re-engage on more level ground and get yourself some exercise. So harness is very important. That is probably, you could spend probably around $50 and get a good harness. And I've got some recommendations. I'll try to list them in the comments section. But there's some wonderful starter harnesses out there that'll last you for 20 years, 30 years. So I'm to the extreme here. So, I mean, I've had people from my Facebook post build similar to what I've built, and I've been really impressed. So, I mean, that can be done too. Okay, so we've got another question or comment here. My producer's letting me know. Keith, hey, Keith again. Thank you so much. Have you found a way to prevent hip problems from dogs that are prone to hip problems? Several of my Huskies have had hip problems. Great question, and thank you so much, Keith. I've been so fortunate. I've never had any dogs have hip issues, and I'm not going to say it's from what I've done. I'll give that some credit, of course. I think some of that's hereditary, and I've just been fortunate. I've never had hip issues. What I usually find is the dogs get arthritis, usually from all the activity we do, and as active as I am with them, it's usually staved off. My veterinarian would say to me, wow, I can't believe when my dogs would get up, they'd be laying down in the veterinarian's office, and he'd be like, oh my gosh, your dog just got up like it was nothing. Said the dog that age to get up without any he said, I'm sure that dog has arthritis, but that without being inhibited by it, it's incredible. So that has helped me. Now they've gotten older even then, and usually get up and lay down is pretty good, but sometimes some of the walking or some of the speeding up has been problematic. And over the years, I've done all different kinds of stuff, from Adequan shots. I don't even know what that is. They do for horses that became popular with dogs now, to there's a new one, Librela, which I've never used because I haven't had a senior dog when it's been around. And there's Rimadyl, which is anti-inflammatory. Some of those drugs like Rimadyl, you have to monitor the dog every so often, but it helps with the arthritis factor. I've done them all as they've gotten older and we've needed it. So, but I want to attribute some of the work I do to help prevent that, but I also want to say that some of it is hereditary, and they're just might not be an easy way around it. Working with a professional veterinarian that specializes in rehab and some of these ailments might be able to help you, like a real lightweight vest or water therapy. I've done that with dogs too, to help work the hips and work their body in a really almost no impact kind of way, because the water makes them weightless. So no gravity to contend with. Thanks, Keith. I appreciate that. Addressing another comment here. And this one is from Cheryl. Cheryl, great to see you. Carry on, Cheryl. I know you can say it. Very informative here on training. I would prefer the easier harness. Well back in the day for me. Where's your show off girl as a model? Lots of laughs. Carry on. So thank you so much. And that is an issue. Putting on a harness, especially when you're gearing up a bunch of dogs to run, you got to put all these harnesses on. And I'm the only one on my team that knows how to really put the harnesses on. So when you get these complicated harnesses, it's work. Now, I always suggest to everybody, go on Amazon and get if you can, a life-size dog similar to the dog you have, if you can. It's not as important. The dogs have 4 legs, and the dogs have their head and their bodies somewhat similar, all of them, at least in the stuffed animal world. And put the harness on. Get used to doing it on there, and when you feel good about it, take a shot at it with your dog, and in a place where you're not going to freak your dog out if you never had a harness on them, the confines of your home, before you try it anywhere else, before you take your dog out using the harness to make sure it's on right, because you get a harness on wrong and you got the leash on the harness because you're walking the dog, not even doing a sport, and the dog just rips the harness off somehow. So, or they can step out of them even if they're on there right. So yes, thank you, Cheryl, for that. I really appreciate that. This Seiko harness. So just real quickly, because I know we're getting later in the show, it connects at 4 points, so it really makes it. The body goes through there, and that's the top. It really makes it incredible, and it's actually got a back ring too to connect it in other ways. But this goes around their neck, and I just think it's an interesting design. These are like $500 harnesses. I mean, they're custom made. They're from Norway, where they made the Seiko cart for a long time, and then they moved it to the U.S. I think they're back in Norway. But really, really well made, good harness. Takes a while to figure out how to put it on. If I don't put this on for a year or two, I'm just not using the Seiko harness, then I forget. I got to go back and refigure it out. By the way, I'm using the Seiko system on some of my bike designs. I'm going to be. I've done it in the past because I love their system. Their bikes are just too expensive, and their bikes are not motorized now. I'm not trying to badmouth them. I used to sell them. I was a North American distributor for Seiko, and I know Hans, who is the dealer, is the manufacturer for him now. That's the gentleman. And he's a great guy. I mean, I have so much respect, and I love their newest design. It's just so expensive, and I know it's tough for everyone to afford. I'm talking $4,000 or $5,000. There's a special edition one they have now, which has some other bells and whistles. The problem is, if it had a motor, I think it would be a lot better. But their design with the tow bars is amazing. I could do a whole show on that. That's inspired me, and that's what originally got me into everything I do. So that's the Seiko harness. Now, real quickly, because I have it with me, this is another version of the Seiko harness. This is a more, this can be used for a lot of different things. They call this a polka harness. And polka harnesses, there's a sport called polka, basically. I don't know if it's Norwegian, Swedish, or what. It's with the sled, and they're pulling a cart in a certain way, and this tethers to the cart. This has got 4-point hookup too. So I've used this on the Seiko cart. You can use it for that because $500 is a lot of money to come up with, and this is like $50. This is a Man Mat, which is a Czechoslovakian company, or you can get them also, I think, out of Canada from Howling Dog. I know when you Howling Dog. I can't say it right. But an interesting design. Again, this is a hard one to put on, but people that are using specialized carts and like the Seiko cart and want a not a cost prohibitive solution, but a cost making it happen solution. This polka harness is really cool. Not many companies make these, so I know Man Mat does, and I'm pretty sure they carry them at Howling Dog. So interesting. I think all the harnesses have really good purposes. So I like building sometimes bikes around the different harnesses. So again, I can try to accomplish working the dog's entire body. So from there, we're going to go on. I've got 2 more. I didn't bring all the harnesses. These are more specialized, everything I've showed you here. So they're probably nothing you're going to use every day. This might be the closest to an everyday harness. And this is like a half body harness. I hope I'm holding it right. This is really interesting. So a lot of places make these. I didn't bring mine because I have some of them too. Roughwear makes a front range harness similar to this. These are more professional harnesses, and I'm not knocking Roughwear. They're great, but it's still more recreational stuff. What I do is recreational, but it's professional enough to need to want to use those. I've used front range harnesses from Roughwear. Roughwear, if you're not familiar, they're like brand you could get at an REI, an Amazon, etc. Most of these brands you won't find on, some of them you'll find on Amazon, but few and far between. So this is more of a half body, almost like what you might call a utilitarian harness. You could actually use this for just walking the dog, be fine. Those dogs you really wouldn't want to walk the dog in. Those harnesses I showed you, they're not really for that. They have specialized purposes. This dog, multi-sport, a lot of good dog joring sports, bike joring, caney cross, ski joring, even sledding to a certain extent. What this does is it pretty much lets the dog use half the body, not their full body, which is fine for a lot of the sports I mentioned, depending on the capacity you're doing them in. But keep in mind with these shorter harnesses, or half body harnesses, as I call them, you're going to have more control over the dog, which is really nice, especially when you're training the dog. So when you get, like we were talking about, the springer on the side of the bike, this is going to keep the dog closer to the springer because it's a shorter harness. Whereas using a harness like this, I'll explain in a second, it's giving the dog more leverage. They can use their whole body because it covers their full body, and this is around their tail, their butt, so they can go further out and you have less control. So if you put this on a leash, this just adds another 3 foot to the 2 foot, whatever, to the leash from half body where the other harness would be all the way out to here. The half body harness, this one in particular, which I really have fallen in love with, is called Alpine, from Alpine Outfitters. And they're an internet-based company. I saw they were offering these on Amazon too. I think they're cheaper on Alpine, actually. They have 3 hookup points in the back. This is the only harness I've ever seen like this. Not to say others aren't out there, but that makes it, if you're running the dog on the side of a bike and the dog pulls one way, you can put it on the opposing side to try to keep the dog near you so it's not stressing too much the side that they're pulling on, etc. If you follow what I'm saying. So if you have it on the side here and they're pulling this way, it's just putting more pressure on that side. But if you go to the other side, it's evening it out in some capacities. Some people have commented on some of my videos that I'm using the springer. I use the springer today on certain of my designs, as I explained, where there's only one tether point. So on that springer, the dogs could be to the side of it in some way. So they're actually pulling to the side. It appears that way. Some of the dogs, it happens sometimes. Some of the dogs will go that way, will pull that way. So what I'll do is on the next exercise, I'll keep note of that. I'll switch the dog on the other side so it kind of evens it out. I've done this for years and never had an issue. But with these 2 back tether points, it gives me the opportunity on my electric dog sled on wheels with the U-bars I use to actually attach them to 2 points. So most harnesses don't have this option. And because they're on the side, that makes it nice for my design of that electric dog sled on wheel U-bars. Now, keep in mind, this is on the top. There's other ones where they will have dual rings like that, dual attachment points that are down lower. So that's what I'm talking about, working the dogs differently. So I could take my electric dog sled on wheels design, if you're familiar with it. It's got the U-bar. It's got the 2 tether points that we hook to, carabiners I use, fancy carabiners. They're called frog clips. And that will go on top of the dog. So the dog is pulling that way, or pushing. I call it pushing. And then, depending on the harness, and then you can hook them underneath with, if you have the other harness, which I don't have here, so they can get from almost like they're pulling from the bottom of their body or more of the mid part of their body, which is interesting because, again, it just working different muscles, challenging the dog differently, getting a whole different kind of exercise without changing anything but the harness. So I know that's a lot to take in, and I hope I explained it well, but there's so many different ways to do this. And I did not explain this last harness. So this is a really popular harness with a lot of sled dog people. A lot of people doing, as I talked about, bike joring and ski joring and even using sleds. This is the closest thing to an X-back harness. And believe it or not, I do have one X-back harness, because the X-back harness I almost would never use for the kind of sports I do. But an X-back harness is pretty much what you're going to see almost any sled dog in, that they're doing it professionally. They're competing. They're doing, there are some other harnesses, but the X-Back design is probably the most popular. And that's what this is based on. This isn't a true X-Back harness. This is by Nonstop Dogwear, which makes some wonderful harnesses, probably some of the highest rated harnesses, I would say. And they're all using this material that seems cushioned and they're very comfortable, but they're calling this harness a free motion harness because the way they've designed it and the way it kind of glove fits the dog, it gives them motion, it gives them the freedom that they say might be restricted from other harnesses they're alluding to. And the way the back comes off of it makes it really nice for the dog to engage and use their whole body to get the proper leverage for pulling a sled, pulling a bike, or for me, what I use it for is for running fast. I'm when I do my speed training, I'm using this harness because it does give them a lot of freedom, and they can engage themselves to the full capacity to gain the speed. So I'm not using it for pulling per se in that regard. This harness to put on is actually easy once you get to know it because it's really got well, I'm not going to say no buckles, but this is the only adjustment you make on it. Let me find it right here. And this isn't even buckled. This isn't even buckled. This is loose. So this is to take this harness off is a little awkward, to say the least. But once you get it down, you got to kind of squeeze your dog's paw up to almost their shoulder or around their shoulder to get it off, but it tightens down really nicely and it loosens up. Here's where that strap goes. So this is pretty much the only strap you'll have to move, or you'll have to adjust, which when you go like that, see that paw won't fit through there. When you take it off, now it opens it up so you can get the dog out of there, and you'd be going through this opening. So it's a cool looking harness. I think it gives the dog a lot of freedom and a lot of ability to use their bodies to engage depending on the sport you're doing. It is a little, it's fairly expensive. It's a little challenging to put on in the beginning, but you'll get to know it really well. To take it off is the most challenging aspect. So hope I explained that well. So we've got another question or comment here. By the way, these are really nice because they're bright and they're easy to see on the trail. So, or when your dog's harnessed up. So from here, this is from Dog Joey, XTVV23. Thanks, dog. Thanks for the comments. So have you ever had a dog escape from you while using one of those? Great question, Joey. Sorry, I really appreciate it. I'm sorry, Dog Joey. I don't know what anybody's name is. I'm just saying it from the what your name is on social media. So great question. I actually I'm thinking way back now. I've had a dog come out of one of the harnesses, I think, when I first started training them, and I'm going back a few generations ago, and the reason it happened, the harness could have been fitted better, maybe. I like to start a little loose because when they're real tight on them, they feel a little restricted, and you might have a tougher time coaxing them to keep going to use the harness. What happened was because of that loose fit, the dog pretty much stopped, and I was trying to coax it to go ahead, so I was moving the bike a little bit, and the dog stood there, and the harness just slipped off the dog. So, but I usually when I'm training the dogs like that, I'll have a 2-point attachment, even if the harness is a single point. I'll have around their collar. I'll use what they call almost like a martingale collar, if you're familiar with that. They use them for sled dogs, where it'll tighten down on the dog. It's not a chain or anything, nothing abrasive. It's fabric. It'll tighten down, but you keep your fingers between it when you fit it, so you know it won't tighten on their neck, but tight enough that the dog can't escape that collar. So that's usually tethered somewhere on the bike. So if the dog would get out of one, because usually when dogs get out of the harness, when you're first training them, they can get freaked and just take off, and they're scared, and it's understandable, but you don't want them taking off where you don't know where they're going and you can't get them back. There's cars, there's other people with dogs, there's a river, etc. So I almost always I call it a safety line, where I'll have the dog connected in some other way so the harness doesn't agree with them and they are still with me. That brings up one other point, though. I've actually had dogs using all this equipment. I should have brought a Springer with me because I talked about it. Using all this equipment, I've gotten imitation stuff because actually, like, there's a Springer imitation out there called, I'm going to call it an imitation, they'll probably get mad, called a Lumitrail. And you can find them on eBay, and they're actually, I like their design better than the Springer because they're push button. So the Springer used a cotter pin, but that cotter pin's stronger than the push button. I've had dogs break the Springer, basically, the Lumitrail. And my dogs are trained to come back to me, so it wasn't a big deal. And when they have a Springer on them, it's a weighted bar. Most concerning is you don't want them to hurt themselves, but they realize that there's something hanging off of them, and and I'm telling them, "Hey, Nikita, stop!" Nikita's the one that broke it. Nikita, whoa, and she'll stop. So she broke one. And I'm talking on the recent dogs. I've never had dogs break equipment besides her. I think she's the only one that's broken my equipment. Cyan. Cyan broke one of our lighter weight pieces of equipment, but she was tethered in two places because we were doing some prototype testing, so we were ready for it. But yeah, when they break equipment or get out of harnesses, it's a good idea to have them safety checked in some other way attached. So we got another question or comment. Thanks for that question. I really appreciate it. And this is from Keith. Hey, Keith. Most of my harnesses are X-back, and I found my Huskies can back out of them fairly easy. I just hooked the collar to the harness, so if they back out, they're still connected to my leads. Great idea, Keith. Yes, that is the thing about X-back harnesses. Because they do give the dog so much motion, they're the harnesses that are probably the easiest to back out of. Good idea to connect that to the leash, though. That to the lead, because with the collar, because that's what you said you do, right? And let me read that again, because make sure I'm seeing this right. So you're saying you connect the collar to the harness. I thought that's what you said. That's why I wanted to read it. So that's a good thinking. I've never thought of doing that, but that's an interesting way of doing that. Yeah, that's the safety check. So, and that's one of the reasons with the X-back harnesses, it gives them so much freedom, so much movement. I'm trying to keep them, usually I go on a lot of bike trails, usually in a tight space, keeping them in a narrow footprint, so I'm welcome on these trails, so other trail users don't have an issue. Might kind of like being on a leash, but even more constrained, if you will. Not to the point where it's uncomfortable. They're plenty comfortable doing what we do, but just not giving them the roamability, the freedom to just roam wherever they want. So that's why I'm using all these other harnesses. They're really about, when you talk about multi-point tethering and you talk about half body, they're all about much more control with the dog. So I appreciate that, Keith. That's a good idea too. See, I love hearing from everybody, hearing their ideas, sharing ideas. That's how we all learn. So that's really helpful. So we've been going here for better than an hour. Appreciate it. Didn't know the show was going to be that long. I appreciate everybody tuning in. I know it's a little technical with all these different harnesses, but there's still more harnesses to be had. And one of my hobbies is actually talking to people about their dog sledding, because a lot of people that do this professionally get some really cool ideas too about harness design and about the way they do things. And I like learning about that and incorporating that into what I'm doing on a more recreational level. But they're great ways. And also searching the internet. I know, you see a lot of bad things out there, but people put some good ideas out there in different forums and different ways you can find out some good companies, small companies. Like I found that Alpine Outfitters, I believe it is. That harness is really good, really comfortable too. A lot of these harnesses seem to be odor free. I usually, I usually just take a vacuum and vacuum the dog's hair off, and that's all the maintenance to it. I will expose them if it's raining or snowing out there. They seem to be pretty much weatherproof. There's been harnesses in the past that have stored odors. Maybe they were just using bad material to make them, so we used to have to put them in a kind of a mesh bag, if you will, and put them through the washer to get that off there. But I find once they get an odor, it's hard to get rid of it. So I love the rubber one I showed you. I'm calling it rubber. It's some kind of poly material, bio something, bio poly or something. And it's actually, I'm going to grab it because there's other, I don't know, I haven't seen many other harnesses made out of this material, but this stuff can't hold odor because it's not porous at all, and it is padded on the inside. So interesting stuff. But different harnesses can make totally different, make the activity totally different. You just want to be careful making sure what you're doing, that the harness will work with that sport for the dog, because you don't want to inadvertently put wrong pressures on your dogs using the wrong type of harness for an activity or a sport, etc. So, and that all just comes from knowledge and watching what's happening, talking to others, and seeing how things go. For what I do, this has all worked for me, but I'm always developing and trying new things and getting the feedback from the dogs. One thing I'd love to mention along these lines, with that polka harness especially. So there's times where even I profess all this stuff, which is all from real world experience, but I've been known to put a harness on wrong here and there because, again, when we're out on the trail, the dogs want to go, you got a million things going on. So what I like to do is always inspect after our first, I call it the piss and vinegar. Get the piss and vinegar out of the dogs. Usually the first mile, at least they're somewhat constrained for a second, though, content. And I get out of the electric dog sled and I look at them all. And I make sure all their proper limbs are through the harness in the right way, because the dogs will take off any way you put them in there sometimes. The harness could be on backwards, and it could be on their head, and they'll just go sometimes. So, but what you'll notice, sometimes it's hard to detect in the beginning if the harness, just their one arm, isn't through, one paw isn't through, one of the straps it should be, or something's not connected right. In the beginning, because they're going so fast and they're taking off usually, depending on what you're doing, it's hard to see. But as you get into it and they slow down a little bit, you can keep an eye on their gait and how they're walking and notice if they're pulling awkwardly. And I've had that happen before. Even Lola, who I just had here, because I was putting the harness on her at one point. I remember she's famous for it. Once or twice it's happened with her where I put it on wrong, and they're moving pretty good, and then all of a sudden they look and she looks like she's limping. So that's the first sign. What's going on? So you stop and you look them over and I say, oh, I missed the loop on the harness. So none of that stuff is detrimental to them. You don't want to do it for, trip after trip, adventure after adventure, but don't beat yourself up on it if it goes on wrong. We all make mistakes. The dog will usually give you the feedback. Hopefully, that's why I say to inspect the dog in the beginning in the harness, because it can get further down the trail where it doesn't really make the dog too awkward, and it just shows up later, which more of a chance of running the dog wrong and just chafing the dog maybe, or it being limited to moving its full motion, and therefore I'm not going to say it's going to damage the dog, basically, but it can chafe the dog rubbing wrong, and it can create other problems. Again, usually not long lasting, but we want to keep that right. I had someone actually point that out to me too when I was posting one of my videos, like, oh, I hope the dog's harness doesn't look like it's on right. So they noticed it. I had noticed it on the trail after, because I did my self-inspection I talked about. Cool stuff. So I hope everybody enjoyed it. And I'm always accessible if you put comments or questions, even on this video, even though we won't be live if you're rewatching the broadcast. Please feel free to put anything down and I can address it accordingly. And I'm on almost all the social media platforms under WoodDriver. I've got a myriad of websites which has a lot of this information on there, You can read about it, which you might be able to follow better, sometimes explaining it because I get caught up in all the different details. It might not come across as easy. So please be sure to check that out. And I'm WoodDriver. I hope to see you out there soon with the new design that I was posting, the bike's new latest design. I hope to be using that in the next day or two, so that should be some interesting footage and interesting stories. Stay tuned for the Rucking Roadster. Have a great